Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Leah Greenberg. I am the co-founder and co-executive director of Indivisible, and I am so thrilled to be here with you tonight to talk all things executive action. Now, we've got an incredible lineup of speakers. They'll be talking about what this moment demands, how we're all part of delivering immediate, meaningful improvements to people's lives. We ask you to get involved in the conversation by sharing what matters to you and your community and commenting below or tweeting with the hashtag Let's Go Joe. Now, before we get to tonight's lineup, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the reality of what working families are facing today. The truth is that while we've made improvements over the last couple of years, millions of people in the United States are still struggling to make ends meet, facing the long-term after effects of COVID, and getting squeezed even further by corporations price gouging basic necessities like gas and groceries. The American people cannot afford to wait any longer for relief, and our federal government can and must implement legislative and executive reforms at the same time to address the issues that we are facing today. Now, the Biden administration has the power to change the course that we are on. You're tired of thinking about what Joe Manchin wants. I'm tired of thinking about what Joe Manchin wants. But he has the power to bring Senator Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema to the table to pass the reconciliation bill. And also he has the power to take a robust executive action across the board to deliver for all of us. Now, here to tell us more about how members of Congress are pushing President Biden and his administration to deliver is Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, the Congressional Progressive Caucus Chair. Now, Rep. Jayapal is a longtime friend of the Indivisible movement. She's beloved by Indivisible groups in her district. She is a leading champion in Congress, and we've been honored to work with her across a range of issues in the House. She has graciously recorded a video for us tonight, so let's roll the tape.
I'm Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, and I'm honored to represent Washington's 7th Congressional District in the House of Representatives, where I also serve as the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. As I'm sure many of you know, the Progressive Caucus just recently released our executive action agenda for the White House. Now, before I dive into this, let me be very clear. Legislating remains critical. It is our best chance to deliver enduring relief and to achieve goals that can only be accomplished through acts of Congress, like allocating government funding, banning corporate price gouging, and more. Democrats made important and significant progress in 2021. Throughout a global pandemic, economic recession, and rebuilding from the destructive Trump years, we were able to create 6.4 million jobs, raise wages, bring unemployment down to its lowest rate since 1969, lower hunger across the country by 32% and child poverty by half, and bring 4.2 million more people health insurance. But the work is far from done, and we can and must use every tool in our toolbox to move the needle forward on critical issues like ending federal student loan debt and addressing the climate crisis. While Congress continues to work for a robust reconciliation package to deliver as much of President Biden's economic agenda as we can, we know that people need relief from rising costs right now. Working families want to see a government that delivers for them, and our agenda for executive actions will do exactly that. These policies can have an immediate and meaningful impact for families across the country. That's why we're calling on the Biden administration to lower costs and raise wages for working people to provide urgently needed economic relief, to advance racial and gender equity by investing in communities that have historically been neglected, and to deliver on our promises, on key progressive priorities, and on commitments that Democrats have made for decades. As a lifelong organizer, please know that while you all fight to make these changes a reality, I am right here in the halls of Congress working alongside you. Keep up the great work, and let's get this done.
Thanks so much to Congresswoman Jayapal. We're so appreciative of her powerful remarks. We're so appreciative of her tireless progressive leadership in Congress. We're lucky to have a champion and a fighter like her leading the way in the House. I now want to welcome another progressive leader who has forged a path for her community and for herself, who in 2018 became the first woman of color elected to Congress from Massachusetts, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. You may know her from her deeply moving speeches on the House floor, or the numerous groundbreaking policies she has championed via legislation, from reimagining our criminal legal system to fair compensation for low-wage workers. You may also know her as one of the leading advocates calling on President Biden to use his executive authority to cancel student loan debt. As she says, the people closest to the pain should be closest to the power, and she has brought the voices of those folks who are unfairly burdened by student loan debt to the halls of power in Washington, D.C. We're now at a place where canceling student loan debt is not just a dream, it is within reach, and it is in large part because of Congresswoman Pressley's leadership. So here to tell you more about the importance of canceling student loan debt is Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley.
All right, well, good evening. Thank you for that introduction, Leah. It's wonderful to be with my Indivisible family and other movement siblings. Thank you so much for having me. Again, thank you to all our movement partners at Indivisible and the thousands of grassroots organizers, the table shakers, the good troublemakers across the country who are joining us online this evening. We stand at a critical moment in our nation. Millions of workers and families are continuing to struggle as a result of unprecedented hurt and harm imposed by the pandemic. We have the opportunity and an obligation to use every single tool at our disposal to provide meaningful relief to ensure that our long-term recovery leaves no worker, no family, no community behind, because we certainly cannot return to a pre-COVID unjust status quo normal. It was inadequate to begin with. So I'm proud to join you all tonight to stand together and to call on President Biden to take bold executive action to provide much needed support to workers, families, and our communities. Now, let me make it crystal clear. An equitable and just recovery must include bold and sweeping relief for millions who continue to struggle under the weight of the $1.7 trillion student loan debt crisis. Our movement to cancel student loan debt and to combat this crisis as the economic and racial justice issue that it is has never been stronger. And make no mistake, that is because of the power of the people. It's because organized power is realized power, as our movement sibling, Latasha Brown from Black Voters Matter reminds us. So this is a testament to years of organizing, mobilizing, and intentional movement building from grassroots organizers like all of you joining us today. And it is true because of the millions of borrowers who have raised their voices and shared their stories to shed light on the real human impact of this crisis. Like the 76-year-old in my district, yes, 76 years old, who is living on a fixed income and still paying student loan debt. Like the young mom who's paying their debt in the midst of skyrocketing childcare costs and rent. And now they're paying their own children's student loan payments, like the teacher who fears losing licensure because they have gone into default because they can't come up with the monthly minimum, debt that they took on because they wanted to be educators, they wanted to be nation builders, and a generation of young people who've been forced to hold off on starting a family, growing a family, starting a business, purchasing a home because of the record levels of student loan debt. This debt is choking at the promise of our entire country. And of course, Black and brown folks disproportionately impacted due to generations of precise and intentional, what I would characterize as policy violence. Because of policies like redlining, our families are obstructed from building generational wealth. And so we borrow at higher rates and we default at higher rates for a chance at the same degree as our white peers. So make no mistake, the student debt crisis is one that disproportionately impacts our Black and brown communities. But there is a harmful narrative, a false narrative that is perpetuated that canceling student debt would be regressive in impact and would only benefit white graduate students who attended affluent universities. That is a falsehood. The narrative has excluded Black and brown folks and the unique ways in which this debt has been exacerbating racial and economic inequities and compounding our gender and racial wealth gap. Black women in particular bear the heaviest burden There's much effusive praise and verbal bouquets given to Black women for the role that we play on the ballot and at the ballot box. Well, you can keep those accolades because policy is my love language. You want to support Black women? Cancel student debt. We bear the heaviest burden of this crisis as we're forced to take on higher student debt loads, all while navigating lingering workplace discrimination, a persistent wage gap that allows Black women to earn just 61 cents to every dollar earned by a white man. Now, this crisis is not naturally occurring. And over the pandemic, many of these inequities have only gotten worse. This crisis is the result of policy choices. Discriminatory policies like redlining, again, which deny generations of Black and brown families the opportunity to build generational wealth. Policy choices like those made during the last financial crisis when policymakers bailed out Wall Street and abandoned Black and brown communities who lost everything. Policy choices that have resulted in the chronic underfunding of our historically Black colleges and universities, our community colleges and state public universities, resulting in skyrocketing tuition and pushing a college degree out of reach for far too many. Speaking of HBCUs, those presidents have been using their ARPA funds to cancel student debt. They have been woefully underinvested in for decades. They have many needs, infrastructure and beyond, and they are using those funds to cancel student debt because why? It is a racial justice issue. And then over the last year, thanks to the relentless organizing and movement builders across the nation, the Biden administration chose to use the authority granted by Congress under the Higher Education Act to offer financial relief to millions of federal student loan borrowers by extending the pause on student loan payments. Not once, y'all, but twice. And that is more evidence of the strength of this movement. This victory is within our reach. We are closer than we had ever been before. It was a policy choice that recognized during this pandemic the crushing burden this debt was having on millions of workers and families in the midst of this ongoing pandemic. In less than 40 days, the Biden administration has another opportunity to stand on the right side of history and cancel student debt by executive action with a stroke of a pen. $50,000 will help 80% of those in the lowest income brackets. Nothing regressive about that impact, y'all. So doing this is the most effective way to provide sweeping relief to millions of workers and families across this nation. Let's alleviate this hardship and this burden as we begin the work of recovery from this pandemic-induced recession. So doing this, canceling broad-based student debt by executive action, stroke of a pen, $50,000 will boost our economy, lay the groundwork for a just and equitable recovery. And perhaps most importantly, canceling student debt would not require one single vote in Congress. Now, that's not to give short shrift to the power of us, but the point is, this does not need to go through a legislative process. President Biden can do this with the stroke of a pen. He can alleviate this burden. He can lift this hardship for the millions of folks from every walk of life that are burdened by this. So he can do this without requiring one single vote in Congress. In this moment, our communities deserve and demand this sort of bold, transformative action, and change can't wait. We are closer than ever before to getting this done. We wouldn't be here today if it weren't for you, y'all, because organized power is realized power. I'm so grateful and honored to be in this fight alongside each and every one of you. And with that, I'm happy to turn it back over to Leah. And shout out to my favorite ASL interpreter, Billy Sanders.
Thank you. And yes, shout out to Billy. Thank you so much, Representative Pressley. As always, we are so glad to be working with you to cancel student loan debt, as on so many things. Now, I am super excited to introduce another champion and all-star of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Representative Earl Blumenauer. Representing the 3rd District of Oregon, also beloved by the Indivisibles in his district, Rep. Blumenauer has been a passionate champion of the New Green New Deal, of protecting public lands, of rebuilding our infrastructure. He has been a longtime advocate for climate action and environmental protection, raising the alarm in the halls of Congress throughout his career and leading on key legislation for protecting our environment. and fighting the climate crisis. He knows what we all know, which is that whatever we call it, the climate crisis is here. It's all around us. It's impacting our lives already. And he is here to talk with us about the path forward and how the administration takes full and decisive action to fight it. So Rep. Blumenauer, and we are excited to hear from you.
You'd think after living on Zoom calls for 2 years, I'd remember. But see, part of the problem is when I share a program with my hallmate, Congresswoman Pressley, it just takes my breath away. I get excited, I get confused. She's a force of nature, and you just saw it there again. And it's an honor to be with you and be with Ayanna in terms of being able to work with you to capitalize on the power. It's been really an honor to be with the Indivisible people in Portland on a regular basis who gather outside my office, focusing on the demands for change and action. One of the things that the Biden administration did on day one is starting to reverse some of the hateful policies that the previous disgraced and defeated president put in place to great damage to our government and to our communities. That was a great first step. And we've made some progress legislatively, resources that have been unleashed. As my colleagues have mentioned, we're not done yet. But one of the most important things that we can do is unleash the powers that deal with the climate emergency that we are in. And make no mistake, here in the Pacific Northwest, for example, in Portland, Oregon, on 3 consecutive days last summer, we set all-time heat records. The third day, it was 116 degrees, and people died. And in fact, that was just the tip of the iceberg. I hate to mix my metaphors, but some parts of our community, in the heart of my district, the heat gun registered 180 degrees. Wildfires, extreme weather events. We are in the midst of a climate crisis, and I think we ought to act like it. That's why I've introduced the National Climate Emergency Act with my colleagues, Representative Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Sanders, having this legislation that has been emulated across the country, over 1,000 communities in foreign countries. It's time for us to enact that legislation for the United States. Think about what we can do, what the defeated and disgraced former president, how he pushed the extent of his powers, often unethical and illegally, giving President Biden the national emergency framework can move forward from the post office to the Department of Defense, being able to take extraordinary action. We have the tools to build a stronger renewable energy industry in America. And while we're at it, I suggest that maybe we pass my End Oil and Gas Subsidy Act and change the tax code to stop giving special breaks to oil and gas companies who don't need it and don't deserve it. And frankly, we can't afford it. We all know right now that too many of our families are feeling the price at the pump, as it were. But what the solutions are is to end our dependency on fossil fuel, strengthen our renewable portfolio, strengthen the ability to provide alternative energy. You know, it's frustrating to me that at a time when we're trying to ramp up electrical vehicles, whether they're trucks, buses, or cars, the US Post Office is poised to purchase over 150,000 gas-burning internal combustion vehicles that'll last for years. Well, maybe in the lens of a national emergency, we would be able to reverse this, whether it encourages the president to demand the resignations of the people on the postal board. I mean, we have an opportunity to jumpstart our electric vehicle industry and charging infrastructure. Think what would happen if we had 150,000 postal vehicles that were electric in every community across the country. Now, these are things we can do if we take the focus of the national emergency and use it effectively, put all our energies in creative efforts, and that we continue your voice demanding change. I deeply appreciate what you've done in our community, what you've done in the halls of Congress, what you've done to encourage us continuing this sometimes unpleasant fight in our nation's capital. But the stakes are worth it. I am honored to be with you and with my colleagues and look forward to working with you to get these proposals across the finish line. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Rep. Blumenauer, and thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for laying out our path to victory on addressing the climate crisis. Thank you for your tireless leadership. I am now excited to welcome Rana Epting, the incredible leader of our partner MoveOn.org. We have been proud to partner with MoveOn over the last several years on everything under the sun, and we are excited right now to talk through how we can collectively, as a progressive movement, ensure that we make a tangible difference in people's lives by delivering on the executive actions that are within President Biden's power. Rana, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Take it away.
Oh, thank you, Leah. It's always wonderful to be together and representing our millions of members all throughout this country. It's an honor to be with you, with the Indivisible community, with Congressman Jayapal, Congresswoman Pressley, Congressman Blumenauer. And I'll just say, you know, when Indivisible and MoveOn come together with progressives in the House, we are quite a force to be reckoned with. So this is the place to be tonight. And I just want to say a bit about the moment we are in. It is a critical moment for us to come together, to be in community, and to remind us of our collective power when we take action together, no matter the odds or the challenges in front of us. Just think about it. Together, we've accomplished really incredible things. We saved the ACA from countless attempts from the GOP in 2017 to repeal it and strip Americans of their vital health care. We impeached a treacherous president twice. We mobilized and were victorious in 2020 election and protected the results of that election from conspiracy theorists and MAGA enthusiasts and white nationalist anti-democratic forces that still, unfortunately, have a stronghold on today's Republican Party. And remember, in 2020, we campaigned to save the USPS, and we're just steps away from a major legislative victory any day now on that legislation. All of these incredible moments we have made possible when we come together. Yet the world continues to be fraught, which is why we join in community, which is why we do not resign ourselves to the status quo, which is why we all know we have a part to play to wield our collective power for good. So I'm very grateful to be here. Also, as Leah mentioned at the top of the call, you know, we sit here this evening as Putin's war continues to rage in Ukraine, and the images, the damage, it's tragic and reminiscent of some of the darkest pasts of our human history. And while President Biden has done an excellent job ensuring we support Ukrainians without turning this into a much larger war, we must remain vigilant. So it is a critical moment. We have a pandemic. I don't need to go into all of it. There are still many threats. But to be blunt about it, it's also a critical moment for us to get real serious about the work we must do to hold and expand our Democratic majorities in the House and Senate. And I know that we all care about that. Indivisibles care about that, MoveOn members. A lot of us are part of the same community. And we know how important that is because we know the alternative is far too dangerous. We worked really hard in 2020 and we can't allow ourselves to slip backwards. So part of the strategy to do that is what we've been talking about tonight. I'm super excited to talk about it. I don't know if you want to do a back and forth, Leah, but I was going to say some words about kind of why MoveOn members and why we're here today to support the executive order work. So I will continue unless you wanted to have a conversation.
Go for it.
Okay. So I hear all the time, I don't know about you, but a debate between whether Democrats should tackle the challenges in front of us with legislative action or with executive action. And I just want to be crystal clear with folks, that is a false choice. We can and we must do both. It is not either or, it is both and. This moment calls for nothing less. And there are 50 votes in the Senate and 218 votes in the House for legislation to reduce the price of prescription drugs, to fight climate change, to make critical changes to the Affordable Care Act. Congress should pass this tomorrow. The votes are there. Call the vote. They should do this. We still have a critical moment of time in this year to pass critical legislation. But as we saw over the last year, there is a limit to what we can accomplish with the current makeup of the Senate. I won't name names, but we know who those people are that have made things challenging. And that's where the agenda that Congresswoman Jayapal and the Progressive Caucus have laid out is so critical. The Constitution gives President Biden wide authority to use executive actions to accomplish so much of what is needed in this moment, and he needs to use it, and we need to get his back so that he can. So we should never give up on congressional action. We cannot, we must not, and we will not. But we should also be calling for what we can do through executive action, canceling student debt, addressing rising wages, fighting climate change, and so much more. And all of this can be accomplished with the stroke of a pen and rulemaking within agencies. And so let's just be 100% clear on this. These actions will help us. They'll help our economy, they'll help our communities, they'll help fight the pandemic, and they'll reduce costs for millions of people. And let's also be 100% clear, these are also widely popular initiatives with voters. It's not just on the merits the right thing to do, it is politically the right thing to do to ensure that we can position ourselves to maintain our majorities in Congress as we head into the election year. Folks, I do not need to tell you what losing in November could mean. Imagine Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Imagine Jim Jordan as chair of the Judiciary Committee leading in fake impeachment proceedings against President Biden. I'm not going to name all the names, it's a little triggering, but we don't want this Republican Party in power. They're not going to be driving anything good. We have made incredible progress, and there's more that we need to do, and there is still time. That is what's at stake. That is why Democrats must deliver and deliver now. That is why we can't just depend on the legislative process, but we also must be driving executive action. So I'm really grateful to Indivisible, grateful for progressives in the House for leading this charge. And I'll just say, for over a generation, millions of MoveOn members have been a bulwark against the radical right, challenging our voices to end wars, protect and strengthen democracy, and make our economy work for everyone. And we're going to continue alongside Indivisibles to show up and to ensure we make these policies a reality and usher us into the 2022 election season, with as much wind at our backs as possible. So let's do this, and we're here with you. Thanks, Leah.
Thanks so much, Rana. And you are absolutely right. When MoveOn and Indivisible come together, our movements can make a powerful difference in people's lives. I am now so pleased to welcome Sylvia Brown of the absolutely awesomely named Visibility Outreach Touch Engage South Arkansas, or Vote SoAR. Situated in South Arkansas, Vote SoAR was launched to till the soil for citizen-led activism and engage its neighbors on issues and solutions that are important to them through trusted messengers and creative communication. Sylvia, we are so grateful for your leadership, and we are excited to hear from you about what action you need to see in order to address the climate crisis and what it means to you. So take it away.
Sure. Thank you so much for the honor to join this community of movement builders, and the honor to be in the space with three champions for progress with Representatives Pressley, Blumenauer, and Jayapal. Greetings from Fulton in Hempstead County in South Arkansas and the Vote SoAR Indivisible group. We're settling into the third year of COVID and tough battles ahead in climate, economic justice, and social justice. But here on the ground, we're not settling or sitting for the status quo, go along to get along. We're asking ourselves, how do I move through the world as a human being? How do I want to show up for myself, for my family, for my children, show up for my neighbors, show up for our community? These centering questions strengthen relationships and movement infrastructure and sustain good governance and accountability. Expecting the executive and legislative branches to work for us. And when they don't, you better believe communities most impacted know how to take action and will take action, making sure lasting change is possible. With climate justice intersecting with economic mobility and access, intersecting with social justice and geographic disparities, it's imperative for the administration to meet the current political moment and repair the crumbling economic, racial, and ecological systems. Just as important, though, is for us, we the people, good people of conscience, regardless of where we are in rural small towns like myself, or urban metros or ex-urban hamlets, to get in the fight and stay in community. So folks, organizing buddies, and as Sister Representative Pressley said, organizing siblings, put on your gloves, marching shoes. We've got to keep moving and building the beloved community and expanding the table.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. Thank you for your words of inspiration. Thank you for your work. And just a huge thank you again to all of our incredible speakers tonight, both inside and outside of Congress. As you've heard on tonight's call, we can cancel debt, we can declare a climate emergency and address the imminent risks and dangers of climate change. We can raise wages, we can lower healthcare costs, we can protect and advance immigrant rights, and more. There is so much that we can do to make transformational change right now in the lives of working people by pushing the Biden administration to be bold, but we are going to need your help to build that momentum. Now, the members of Congress on this call, and many more not on this call, are doing an incredible job of highlighting the need for Biden to act. They are doing the work in Congress, but they cannot do it alone. That is why we need you to get engaged. We need you to help us to build that united front that asks President Biden to act now. This is winnable. We are seeing wins on a regular basis on executive action. We believe that there are more coming in the future, but it is going to take your members of Congress weighing in with the administration, very publicly supporting our priorities, and it is going to take a real surge of constituent engagement and engagement by regular people all over the country to make sure that they know the wind is at their back. So every single one of you is critical in this fight. That's why what we are going to ask you to do, though, is going to be dependent largely on who your member of Congress is. We know that presidents tend to listen more to members of Congress in their own party. So if you have got a Democrat or a Democratic representative or senators, we're going to ask you to call your members of Congress to urge them to weigh in with President Biden on declaring a climate emergency, on canceling student debt, on taking action on a wide range of issues within his authority. If you're represented by a Republican or you do not have congressional representation, we want to make sure that your voice is still heard. We are encouraging you to call the White House comment line directly. This gives the president a strong platform to show Republicans that these policies are popular in his district too, to make sure that he is hearing from folks all over the country on the urgent need to act. I see that there is a comment in the chat box specific from Chris Tidmarsh, noting that the comment hours or the calling hours for the White House can be shorter than the calling hours for Congress. Great point, Chris. That is why we have built a handy email tool for you to be sure to reach the White House. I believe we'll be dropping the link for that in the comment section right now. So if you want to reach out to the White House at a different time, go ahead and use that email tool to contact them. Now, we need as many members of Congress as possible, not only very publicly supporting our key priorities for executive action, but also urging the president and the administration to deliver for all of us. That is why your voices are so important. That is why you play a powerful role in moving those members of Congress to action. That is why we need you to let the White House know what you need. We believe that all of these policies are on the horizon. We believe that they will make an enormous difference in people's lives. And we believe that they are possible. So let's go. Let's all of us go and let's tell President Biden, let's go, Joe. Now, you can go to letsgojoe.indivisible.org or text Let's Go Joe to 59798 to learn more. And together, we can take those actions that will change people's lives, that will really deliver for working families all over the country, and that will change the lives of everyone on this call and so many more. So thank you and have a great night.